Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another Enigma Mode development live stream. I see there, Power of Truth and Tiger. Welcome. I hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to be working on the behavioral adjustment patch. Well, script, rather. This is going to be a part of Enigma 2.0. Essentially, what I realized is by making Enigma public and developing it up until what I've done so far, I've basically already done enough that anything I do more at the moment won't be noticed by players. So instead, what I'm going to do is keep working on this Enigma 2 variant so that I can time it. Because effectively what's going to happen, or what's already happened, is the first kind of wave of interest in Enigma happens, and then it dies down. That's normal. People last like a month, however long they last. And then they're going to go into a state where they need to be away and take a break. This period is, let's say, like 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And what I'm very interested in is what I can do to Enigma to make it so that when people have stopped playing, then they come back. Make sense? Because that's really the interesting thing for me. We can make something very flashy and interesting that gets the novelty factor, right? But that won't really fix Valheim's issues. It just sort of distracts from them for a moment, right? What I want to do is figure out how to have such a deep experience that when a player stops, they kind of reflect back and then they realize things that they didn't try, or they hear someone talking about something and then they want to do it themselves. Make sense? I realized I should make sure my voice is actually showing up, and it is, so we're good, we're good. So today, we're going to work on a part of this process. So I'll show you a little thing here. Yeah. Basically, let me be visual. I'll try and show instead of tell. So basically, let's okay, I just started a new seed in Enigma 2.0. And so you can immediately see, like, okay, where did we just start? You see this? We're in a meadow, yeah, but it's surrounded by plains and mountains? What's this? That's because Enigma mode now starts you not in the center. The idea is that the players have to make it to the peaceful center meadows if that's where they want to go. But this way, we immediately, from the beginning, give them access to multiple biomes. Because basically, I need to rant a little bit more before I show you. But this thing happens in Valheim where the players stop playing around the swamp, mountains, or plains in the basically when the mid game starts. Valheim's early game is super powerful, and then the mid game people taper off. And at first I thought maybe there was a problem, but then, maybe that's just because of the linear nature of Valheim. Maybe people are always only going to experience a couple biomes, maybe 1 to 3 biomes, and then you're just naturally going to lose interest. If that's the case, then it's not about, then the problem isn't because of the mid-game. The problem is that the player is forced to start in the meadows and then go to the Black Forest, and you see what I'm saying? It's forced to start from a certain point. So what I believe is that if we give players access to a variety of different biomes immediately from the beginning, while still allowing them to do progression, right? Let's make sure that actually happened. Yep, there we go. Look, Eek, we can still get to the Eek boss temple right there, right? So yeah, we have all this biome access, but it hasn't gotten rid of our ability to access Ether, right? And the theory is that if we remove the linear start, then the player is more free, not fully free, but more free to try a different biome than they did last time. And for me, what I've had good experiences with in Valheim is joining, like this time when I was playing on the live stream that I've been doing. I haven't been playing on that character a whole lot recently. I've been doing more development, but I did really enjoy my experience so far. And I've basically just been playing in the plains. I tried to start in the plains to see what's missing from that experience, because what I want for like Enigma mode to feel real for me, like that it's doing what I really, really want it to. Basically, I want the player to be able to get marooned anywhere with almost nothing in no map, no portal, and then be able to build a base, survive, and either get back or decide to stay where they were. Like right now, the linear nature of Valheim itself prevents that experience. You can't just like go out and like sail in a ship and crash somewhere and then have a good time. You know what I mean? You have to find a meadow to crash into, or a black forest, or you have to remember all of the progression items to make the forge and all the other stuff so that you don't get screwed over. Because in vanilla Valheim, if you crash into a plains and you deal with the death skeeto, like, all right, how are you going to get your Surtling cores? How are you going to get your tin? How are you going to get your iron? How are you going to get all these other materials that you need to build your basic base? You can't unless the biomes are nearby, right? So I have a strong gut feeling that one of the ways we can enhance the replayability of a Valheim world is by giving this roaming ability. I don't know how to explain it, but the players need to be able to roam and literally get completely lost, go out on a boat adventure, and then just crash somewhere completely random. It could be a Mistlands coast, it could be a plains, it could be, you know, some like weird mountains coastline, anything. They should then be able to progress from scratch, build a base, have fun. I think that's key to this experience, because once that can happen, then you can be with your buddy, just join in multiplayer or whatever, and then just go off in some random direction, and like you don't have to be so concerned about keeping track with the first part of the game, because you can feel confident that wherever you end up, you'll be able to kill monsters and kill stuff, and eventually you'll be able to progress. Like, I need to make the experience of throwing a bed down in some random place in nature be fun. You know, where you can just, okay, you're tired of where you are, get in a boat, sail randomly, get lost, and then make a new base and have fun, right? Like, this is what we need to enable. So what I'm going to be talking about today, and welcome, by the way, Fish. I'm glad to see you. I'm enthusiastic about this point, so I am looking at the chat, and I'll see it, but I won't address things immediately, because then I'll get distracted about what I'm talking about. So the reason I've been explaining all of this stuff is because it leads up to what we're going to be working on today, which is this kind of monster behavior package. If you've played on Path of Magic, then you've probably noticed there are certain monsters, like in the plains, for example. If I were to go... Oh yeah, I can just go like right here. Let's go to the plains real quick. Bum, 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 bum. There's some plains. Where's the better plains? There we go. If we just go over here, we'll probably be able to find some of these shaman, basically, that are adjusted. And when I was playtesting, I found it quite interesting the way that the different kinds of monsters behave. Because in normal Valheim, monsters are very, they have very boring behavior patterns. Essentially, all Valheim monsters do the same thing. They have a chance to attack you, and then they'll run away in a circle, like a clockwise or counterclockwise circle or whatever it is. And then they'll try and attack you again. And then some of them will try and attack you twice, like this one. But once he attacks you twice, like, see, he's going away. So they have a completely, absolutely predictable behavior pattern. And this would be fine if it was just one monster. But it's the same across all the monsters with some slight variation. So once you've played a lot of Valheim, you learn to just completely, like, be unkillable if you're paying attention, right? So there he attacked 3 times, right? That was a little bit different, but still, you can see how he does the run thing. It's totally, utterly predictable, right? He's going to keep attacking if I'm really close by, but then for the most part, he's going to run away, right? This predictability doesn't matter in the beginning of the game. It doesn't matter when the player's first running around. But it really, really starts to matter once the player has been playing and they've noticed the generation patterns of the game. They're going to have more of these experiences where they're just, like, invincible and the world no longer holds a threat to them and it's completely predictable. Like, I know exactly what this goblin will do in essentially every situation this goblin can be in. Like, he's going to keep chasing me as long as he's in my sight, right? Eventually, I could out of line of sight him, right? And then he would eventually leave. Okay, yeah, that's kind of interesting. But it's repeated across every single mob with some slight variations, right? So I can bring this goblin, as long as he continues to see me, he'll just keep chasing me. And I can bring him over to this verger, and even though the goblin's been chasing me, the goblin's gonna try and kill the verger, right? Like here, the goblin got far enough away from me that he forgot where I was, but if we just keep having him over here, I can just bring him over to this verger, and then he's just gonna try and kill the verger. He's gonna completely forget about me. I can just run over here and hide up on this hill or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not criticizing this. I'm just saying that this is a simple system that is repeated across loads of different monster types in Valheim. And that makes it highly, highly predictable. And while I do want to do more than just, you know, change the starting biome, etc., etc., I think that one of the reasons Valheim feels predictable is because of monster behaviors. You can see that the moment there's multiple monsters in the situation, it's less predictable. It's more interesting, right? But this is problematic to rely on because Valheim itself doesn't handle multiple monsters and networking well. So I want to try and go in a different direction, where we create a bunch of modular behavior types that could be applied to the monster. So let me show you the list and you'll get a better sense of it. I'll just run over this and then we'll talk a little bit more about its implementation. We'll start with some examples. So, for example, one mob type would be an assassin. And this mob is slower than other mobs, but if it gets near you... yeah, you guys can't see this. There we go. But if it gets near you, you just die. It doesn't matter what you're wearing. It doesn't matter how strong you are. If you let that mob get close to you, you die instantly. That's just how it is. So there's all these different behavior types. And for another example, here's one called a bargainer. And so every time you hit it, there's a chance that it's going to become tame and be like, wait, don't kill me, I'll be your friend. Okay? Makes sense? So essentially, you can tame this mob by punching it or hitting it without killing it, and you'll guarantee eventually that you tame it. Okay? So we're focusing on mechanical changes here. Like, let's look at this one, for example, a glutton. This eats item drops that other monsters drop and heals. So the player will want to target the glutton first, because if they don't, the glutton's going to take their loot. Make sense? And then there's a whole bunch of other things like this. But you can start to piece together what I'm getting at. Like, Valheim's monsters, I think visually they're fine. I don't think I can improve the game. Let's say I could add another type of monster. I don't think that is the problem. There's a good amount of monsters in Valheim and a lot of variety with the monsters. The biomes have a strong identity of their monster types. I don't personally think adding more monsters to the game is necessary. Rather, we can just adjust the behavior of the monsters so that it's more interesting to the player. Make sense? So what I've got to figure out now is how to convert this list of types into modular scripts that we can then apply to certain monsters. I don't want every monster to have this, but it should be something that's encountered, right? And maybe certain biomes have more of one and less of another, and other biomes have more of that and less of another, right? So let's look at a couple more of these, and then I'll start talking about kind of how I need to implement things. So another one would be Chaser. This one's pretty simple. The Goblin Shaman, the Tribunal are already kind of like this because they're pretty zippy and fast, right? But monsters have a chase distance limit, so they'll stop chasing you after a certain point. So you can just edit it and make it so there is no end to that limit, right? You can make cowards, so monsters that as soon as they get hurt, they're going to run away. So you should attack the cowardly mob once to make it leave and stop attacking you. Make sense? So this is one thing I want to really hammer down, is that the point, to get this to work properly, to really add depth, there needs to be a clear counter that the player learns for each mob type. Make sense? Because the mob itself will look the same. Maybe it'll be, always a 2-star mob. It'll have a name difference, though. For example, like you saw earlier with the Diverger, if it's a coin trader, it has a name above it, right? So they'll see a different name, and that'll be the cue to use the counter to that kind of behavior, right? So let's look at some of these and kind of see how effective a counter could be, because each one needs to have some behavioral change that if the player does that behavioral change, they're going to have a better time countering the monster type, right? So here, for example, we have a Viking Hunter. This is just, if you've played Palm or Enigma, you've already experienced this, because anytime you have a raid in like a goblin camp, and it spawns those like jilted lovers or monsters that chase you down and just never stop chasing you, they always know where you are. That's a part of vanilla Valheim called hunt mode. So in this case, for example, how would you deal with a hunt mode? Let's say you're fighting 10 monsters and one of them is a hunter. How do you deal with that? Well, you would run away, because the hunter is the only one that would chase you continuously. All the other ones would leave, so you would separate the hunter, okay? That's viable. As long as there's a behavioral change the player can engage in to handle the mechanic, it's all good. They just need to be able to learn what that is, right? So for the assassin, for example, players will absolutely hate this, but I don't really care. I see value in it. Does that make sense? I know that for a game world to feel real, there needs to be a threat. And one of the problems in games is that the players develop this sense of power over the world, and it's one of the reasons they enjoy the game, because they enjoy growing powerful and feeling powerful. The problem with this is that it creates this desire in them to not want to ever die. But the problem is that once you have a player who never dies, their immersion is not as intact, unless they are, like, how do I put it? They are aware that they're one moment away from death. And if they're aware of that and they're not dying, they're probably immersed. But my point is that when you have too much power in your players, they learn to not give a crap about the mechanics, because they can just overpower them. And this, in turn, leads to the players having a less enjoyable experience in the future. So that's why, like, you need, I think for something like Enigma, it's important that there's certain things that, like, you can't survive if you try and brute force it. You will die. Make sense? So that's the mentality with something like this. Like an assassin, if you've ever seen like assassin snail videos on YouTube, basically it's a trope in games where you make a mechanic rather, where you make a mob that will insta-kill the player, but then you make the monster really, really slow or something like that, right? There's ways you can do this. So in this case, the assassin wouldn't be that. The assassin would be like something that will insta-kill you but only in melee range, right? Whereas there's other things that are also unfair, like an immortal monster that you can't kill. The only way to survive is to survive around it for 30 seconds or 60 seconds or however long the timer is that makes it vanish, right? So there's always a counter. You just have to learn what that counter is. And sometimes that counter is going to be running away or being patient and staying still or, you know, not trying to just kill the thing. Makes sense? That's the goal. We want to make sure the player always has to know, no matter how powerful you are, if you don't remember these basic tenets and apply them, you're going to die. Make sense? I think that that's really important, at least in an experience like Enigma Mode. So let's look at a couple other of these. The leader one I think is kind of interesting. So this one basically takes advantage of two existing mechanics. One, we can make a monster change its spawn point so it then walks towards other monsters or other buildings without the player being nearby. Because if the player's nearby, they're going to try and attack the player. So the player has to be near enough for the monster to exist, but not too close so the monster gets angry. So just keep that in mind. Kind of a tangent though. But in the case of the leader, basically it's a monster that is attracted to other monsters of its type. And when it gets to a weaker monster, it makes them a strong monster. And then it becomes attracted to the nearest weakest monster. So you can make a monster that's like this leader monster that goes from weaker monster to weaker monster to weaker monster, making them stronger, right? And this is one of the other things here. Yes, I'm trying to do combat and introduce variety in combat, but through doing this, we'll also handle a couple other things. For example, we'll be able to create emergent gameplay opportunities for the player. Let's say they want to farm loot and they find a leader monster. Well, they could decide to not kill the leader because the leader effectively converts all the monsters nearby, one by one, into a 2-star monster, resulting in exponentially more loot than just killing normal monsters, right? So every time we add one of these mechanics, as long as we do it in a modular way that doesn't delete another one, then basically we're going to keep stacking this exponential mathematics so that it becomes impossible for the player to experience everything. Like, you can literally make gaming systems where there's so many different possibilities of events that can occur that every time the player goes out, they're going to have a slightly different experience. Yeah, they're walking in the plains, but one time they see a leader goblin that happened to be near this other thing that happened to be near this, and they had a slayer task to do that, and blah, 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 blah. You see what I'm saying? We need a lot of modular variety. And that's why I'll get to one other point before I start looking at the actual implementation. I think, most likely, these should be stackable. Because if we just apply them one at a time, that's going to be cool. But imagine if they can interact with each other, sometimes canceling each other out, sometimes making something that's insane, sometimes making something beneficial for the player. This is, I think, kind of the power of when we make modular things that can be applied onto each other. That's the key to making a situation where there's, 100,000 different possibilities in a given situation. Like, you can't do that if you try and think of every single possibility. But if you just think of a nodule and then you apply all these nodules to each other in a combination, suddenly there can be tens of thousands of possibilities, right? Like with the Slayer tasks on Enigma right now, there are quite literally tens of thousands of different possible Slayer task combinations that you can get. I didn't come up with 10,000 individual tasks. I came up with like 90 something different variations that get applied in different layers, and there's like 7 pieces to each task. So you end up with a grouping sort of tens of thousands of different possibilities, right? And this is what is really important to add to that procedural magic that is Valheim. Okay. So, welcome. Oh, no. You already said you already were here, Tiger. Welcome. I got confused. I thought you were a new person. Hello again. And Tiger says the first time they met a 2-star goblin, they died almost 4 times. Hey, that's really good. If you only died 4 times, I mean, starred goblin, 2-star goblin especially, are notorious for just slaughtering. You know, you try and hold your shield up to that thing and boom, it just wrecks, right? Absolutely wrecks. Originally I came here to find some shaman, but I'm not too worried about that right now. I think I illustrated the point. There's a bunch of different variations that we want to put on mobs, but now I need to figure out how to kind of plug this in to Enigma mode itself. Make sense? This is where it gets a little bit tricky. Let me show you how something works. So I'm going to go into ghost mode, and we're going to spawn a goblin. It's going to be a regular goblin. And then next to that goblin, we're going to make a little pit here for the goblin to be alright in. How should I do this? I know what I'll do. I'll just do it like this. Miscellaneous, right? Yeah, miscellaneous. Boom, 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 boom. Nothing too fancy. We just want to make sure that there's no escape. Alright, looks fine. So, I can make scripts that apply all of the different behavior types. There's ways to do it. That part I'm not too concerned about. The thing I have to figure out is how to do it in a way that's modular so that they can stack on top of each other, and also how to plug it into the existing system in Enigma mode. So if you haven't played Enigma mode, it has a system where monsters themselves can level up. So for example, we have this goblin, right? And if I were to spawn a deer, and then the goblin eats the deer, basically, eventually they'll catch on to each other. The goblin will then heal, because the deer heals him. Anytime they eat like a passive creature like that, they'll get healed. And then it rolls a chance to level up. In this case, nothing happened. It's not leveling up, right? But let's... Oh, wrong command there. Let's give it 2 deer. Okay, he healed. He healed. But then nothing happened, so he didn't level up. It might actually be because I'm here. I may have given a ban on players doing it. I don't actually remember, so let's see. We'll put 3 deer in. I'll go back here. There we go. Okay, something nearby just grew stronger, right? So let's let him finish off the rest of these deers here. Okay, then he grew stronger again. Alright, alright. Then he killed the last deer. Alright, we're good. Now I can go back, see what's going on with this goblin. He was a normal goblin, right? Whereas now, he's a tough goblin. And he's 1-starred. So let's look at what's different now, because you can think that it's just the star level, but it's actually more than that. We've also influenced his behavior. So now, watch how he attacks me. He runs, he attacks. He attacks. Do you notice what's different? Feel free to mention in the chat if you can see. Can you figure out what is different about this goblin? And if you already play on Enigma, you probably know exactly what it is. But there's something completely different about this goblin's behavior that does not match how all other monsters in Valheim behave. And in Enigma, this behavior adjustment happens once the monster becomes tough. So any monster can become tough, and then its behavior in combat changes. Now, let's take this a little bit further. Let's give more deer to this friend of ours here. Let's give him some deer and run away. He's Gonna get distracted. Alright, he leveled up. He should be level 2. Yeah, he's level 2, and he's tough, tough, tough. Yeah, see? He's a big baddie now. He's fast. Look how fast he is. He can catch up to the deer. That's so funny. I didn't realize they got that fast. Dude, look at him. Oh, run, deer. Run. Oh, no. Wow, that's something else. So if you haven't figured out what's happening, basically every time the goblin kills a deer, the goblin gets a tough prefix and it increases its star level. Once the goblin is tough... Oh, those tar pits, they're gonna kill him now. Oh no, he's after me now. That's too funny. Oh, now there's a big goblin camp over there. Okay. So basically, once the goblin is tough, they stop running away. You see that? So he should attack and then just keep attacking. Notice the difference. Earlier, the goblin would attack up to 3 times, but then he would leave, right? Whereas here, let's dodge his attacks, right? Notice how he's not running away. That's what tough does. So Enigma already has a behavioral adjustment system in place, right? There's basically, the monsters can level up by killing players. The same thing happens. Or if they kill deer, or if they kill hare. So for example, let's say I spawn, I don't know, let's spawn like 10 hare, right? See if he manages to get one. Yeah, there we go. Okay, he got one, and now what happened? Well, because he was already a 2-star goblin, instead of becoming tough, something new happened. He became empowered. So if we find him, wherever he is, running off after all these bunnies, probably, he should now be an empowered, tough, tough, tough goblin. Alright? So essentially, he's faster, he's stronger, and he doesn't run away. Well, he won't run around you. Makes sense? He'll just keep coming at you and attacking. So, what I'm figuring is, what if when monsters evolve like this, they can get an affix, right? That's the idea. And that way I can make it so the empowered system adds these affixes, but then also sometimes the monsters just have them. You know, maybe sometimes they spawn and they already have that for whatever reason, right? Now you can kind of imagine how just making a little adjustment to behavior can have big ramifications in gameplay. This monster, for example, only has 3, I guess, adjustments. Well, okay, actually no, there's like 4 or 5 adjustments. But the ones that are really simple, that I'm saying have like complicated ramifications, are the fact that it doesn't circle you, right? And that it just keeps attacking. That's caused by the fact that it doesn't circle you. So if you just remove the circling, that alone will surprise players. It makes the monster harder because they don't give players a chance to just do the circling thing, right? That alone will usually kill the player who is experienced in Valheim and doesn't know that about Enigma, right? So, aside from that, of course, you can also do other simple things. You can give them a lot more health. You can do all sorts of other things, but ultimately, you have to be creative. Just giving more health doesn't really cut it, to be honest. It can work, but that alone isn't going to make the monster more fun to fight. It'll actually make it more likely the players are just going to leave it alone because it's such a damage sponge that it's kind of like a pain or boring to do enough damage to it to kill it. That is useful in a certain context in moderation, right? And that's the idea with all of these things here. We want to implement them in a modular fashion so that they can just be applied to a monster, and many different things could apply them to monsters. Make sense? That way, it could be the empowering system. They could just be spawned that way. Maybe sometimes a player can cast a spell on a monster that changes their behavior. Maybe you could pacify a monster somehow. I don't know. But if I make it modular, then it's all possible, right? So let's start. Let's take one of these as an example. Let's find the easiest one to do, okay? What would be the easiest? Oh, Viking Hunter has hunt mode. Okay. Very, very easy. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this Dverger Watcher file, going to open it, and then I'm going to make a copy, paste it, and then we're going to rename this new file. Instead of Dverger Watcher, it's going to be Monster Behavior Variants. Okay. There we go. New file. Boom. All right. Now we can get started. So the first one we want to do is this, how do I put it? It's basically yeah, it just hunts. It just has hunt mode. That's very, very simple, right? So if we go over to I guess I can just start it. Oh yeah, this is the one I was looking at, right? Yeah, okay. I get confused with these files if they're not right next to each other. So there we go. That one is what I'm working on, and then this one right here. Nice. So before I get that, let's see what Power of Truth said. So he says, can you make it so that when the Fenris do the jump attack, they don't change direction mid-air towards you? You could make a special kind of Fenring, maybe, but that's a little bit complicated because in general, okay, Dakar could probably do that. Zeal could. They're very good at adjusting monster behavior, so maybe that's doable. I find it to be quite challenging to actually change the attacks. The reason for that is because it's really, really time consuming. So you can make a custom attack, but to do so, you have to reiterate and playtest it a lot. And I found that in general, okay, let's say you make a custom attack, like, okay, that's cool, but it doesn't, like, what I've realized is that there has to be behavioral change, right? So if you make a custom attack, it works if the custom attack causes a behavioral change in the player. But let's say you add a custom attack to your skeletons on your server. It's not really going to matter. It may look cool, but the player's just going to club through them. You know what I mean? If you add custom attacks to your boss fights, those are going to get noticed. Those are going to be more impactful. So for me, it's not that it's not possible. It is possible. It's more of how much time it takes to customize attacks is greater, and the result in gameplay difference for the player is pretty minimal. Unless your attack is pretty drastic. You know, like if you do like a big AoE meteor strike on an area that's telegraphed, that has a clear gameplay change, right? That would add depth to the combat experience. I'm not saying custom attacks don't. I just find them to be time spent ineffective because they tend to take a while to make and make them feel good. And then there's a, let's say, 50-50 chance that it's just some novelty thing nobody's ever going to use or care about. So that's why I'm more interested in adjusting the existing monster behavior using things that would apply like to, you know, hundreds of monsters across the player's experience over time. Because that way, the chance of them interacting with that is much higher. Make sense? But to get back to your question, I think it is possible, yeah, to make the Fenring do a jump attack Wait, did they not do that? Because I think, let me see actually, let's see. Spawn Fenring. Alright, Mr. Fenring, do your work. So how does the jump attack work? We got our howl, we got our normal strike, alright. Then he's gonna do the jump. Okay, so what you're saying is basically you want it so that there is no, yeah, I guess I'm confused because to me it sounds like he already functions the way you described. Because he doesn't... Actually, no, it probably is like half, right? Like, he starts to do the leap. And there, right, he did telegraph towards me. But that's because I was closer to him, right? If he starts and he's far away, like that, you see what I mean? Like, he doesn't actually change mid-air, I think. He can just stop if he hits you. But, like, he doesn't actually change mid-air already, right? Oh, okay, so, but he does spin mid-air. I see, that's what's happening. So basically, once he leaps, it is a linear direction. Like, he leaps in a straight line, but then his character model can spin, basically. And because his character model can spin, and it'll always face towards you, that makes it look like he's curving his leap. But he's not actually curving his leap. It just happens, and he can turn. Makes sense? And then if you're in the way of his leap, then he's going to stop right there. He's not going to go over you. Makes sense? But I think the things you're talking about are possible. Again, it's just, it's like, it's easier to do this. Basically, you find the monster, you go data dump equals, let's say, Fenring. Okay? And so now, if we go into our data file, and we scroll to the bottom, or we just search for Fenring, right? Oh no, of course I have Fenring already. Here we have all of the vanilla fields for a Fenring. Okay, so you can see literally everything. You can see their behaviors. You can see, you know, the one I was talking about earlier. See this right here? Circulate while charging. Circulate while charging, flying. Maybe that's what you're talking about. I don't know. You'd have to test it. Basically, you'd have to disable things, try setting them to different things. Like if it's a 1, set it to a 0, see what that does. If that doesn't do anything, set it to a 1e30, which is like infinite high as far as it's concerned. And if that doesn't work, set it to like -1, see what that does. Sometimes you can like use improper values to cause behavioral changes. Makes sense? So, so you notice it in the frost caves, and he leaps around. Yeah, I think that would make sense, because basically he leaps, and the leap brings him close to you, and once he's close enough to you, he can turn towards you, right? And because of the way the animations work in Valheim, like, it basically creates the animation that he's turning around the corner to you, but really he's just jumping and then turning after the jump, I think, at least. But maybe it's like a combination of both. I'm not entirely sure. There's actually a lot that goes on in the animations. I won't get too much into that though, because I have to finish up in like 20 minutes today. So today's a bit of a shorter stream. But so what I was getting at is that generally this is the easiest way to change things. You find something that already exists in the game. For example, here we can see enable hunt player. Okay? If I change this to a 1, I just changed one value. That's it, right? And now if we look at this Fenring and go data load equals Fenring, right? Now suddenly this player, or this Fenring, will always know where I am. It is now impossible for me to escape the Fenring. Even if I run super far away, as long as he's still in the loaded zone, and I'm not in ghost mode, you see? He's just gonna come find me, because he always knows where I am, because he has hunt mode on. This is actually how raid monsters spawn in Valheim. So anytime a monster spawns as part of a raid, it's going to do that. Now, you can see, interestingly, he has gotten distracted. So even though he knows where I am, he's still prioritizing trying to fight the monster that is closest to him. And in general, that's how it works in Valheim. The monsters will target the closest compatible monster to them, pretty much. So there's ways that you can make like taunts and that kind of thing by messing with that. And that's a whole other game to play, basically, right? So here we have a normal fueling, right? Nothing special. But let's figure out this one hunt thing, right? Because for this modular system, basically I have all of these, right? What I need to do is convert every single one of these into a script that can then get applied to a mob type and then will behave, okay? So let's take the... Where is the hunt one? The Viking Hunter. There we go. The Viking Hunter. We're just going to copy this. And then I'm going to go here. And then I'm just going to comment this out. There we go. Viking Hunter. Okay. Pretty simple. Now, first, we're going to need data. And there's going to be a lot of data in this script. So probably we should make a double file just like I did earlier. Sometimes it's better to just put the data in one existing file. Other times it's better to make like a dedicated data file for it. So that's what we're going to do in this case. Because while this is simple, what I'm about to do is very, very simple. What will come later will have more data. So let's change this to data monster behavior variance. That's it. Now we'll open this up and then just delete this stuff and save it so it's a blank file. Now let's make sure this is next to the other ones. All right, we have our Viking Hunter. So let's start with the data for Viking Hunter, okay? So that would be something like this. We have name, or let's go down a little bit for visuals. Data for monster variation. I'll go in and embiggen a little bit for you. So, no, not a prefab file. This is a data file, so it's going to start with name. And then in this case, it's the data that we're going to check against to see, is it a Viking Hunter mob? Okay, if it is, then it's going to do this thing. Or whatever, right? In this situation, we are using a fully vanilla thing, so it doesn't really matter. I don't have to make a script for it. Well, I sort of do. I have to make the script to apply the data, but I don't have to make a script to handle the behavior. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. So basically, this is going to be a Viking Hunter. Or let's say Viking... There'll be the Viking Hunter data. Yeah, Viking Hunter. Let's just do it this way. I don't know if this is how it's going to play out, but this is how I'm going to do it. We need the spawn data. Okay, in this case, it's going to be just has hunt mode, which I can actually just find if I go into one of the big data files. I probably already have something with hunt mode, so I can just search for hunt mode, basically. Hunt's not there. Let's look in the Palm Master. There's definitely going to be something here. Hunt. There we go. Hunt player 0. This is a vanilla field. I could have actually just looked in here. I forgot about that. But sorry about that. I know it's confusing having a bunch of text on the screen, so I'm trying to keep it more simple. Here we go. So basically, there we are. This would be the vanilla makes it hunt the player. We don't just want that, because if we do it this way, they won't notice. Make sense? Nothing will happen. So perhaps what would be better is if they also see a visual, right? In this case, all we can do is the name. Let's check that out real quick. So we would just go into, I guess I can go back into the Palm Master and look for a character name. No, it's right here, humanoid name. Okay, cool. So we're going to go back over here. There we go. All right. So now we want to figure this part out. So it's going to try and look at the humanoid name. This is a whole mess. I got so screwed over with this. I'm not going to worry about that. We're just going to use the prefab name, and it's going to be weird. It'll be like in a bracket or something, or say enemy goblin. Don't worry about that for now. For now, I'm just trying to emphasize this, right? So it's going to be the prefab name, which is going to be something like goblin. And then after that, we want it to be Viking Hunter. Goblin, Viking Hunter. Or Viking Hunter Goblin. Whatever you feel like is best. In this case, I'm going to go with Goblin, Viking Hunter. Okay? Just like that. This way, the player knows, okay, that is a hunt goblin. Make sense? So let's do that. And then let's adjust this script just a little bit here. And I'm going to do it very simply. I'm just going to give us a command to spawn a goblin with this behavior. All right. You can imagine how when you actually implement it, you would make the game world itself spawn that monster in some specific situation. But in this case, I'm going to make the player able to just spawn, let's say, hunt goblin. It's going to be hunt goblin. Okay. Very easy. It's going to spawn a prefab that is a goblin with the data that is this Viking Hunter data. Make sense? So let's save that, save that. We're going to copy this. Now we can go back into the game file here, and I can say hunt goblin, and then what do we have here? We have a player Viking Hunter. There we go. That's actually pretty funny because of the way I spawned it, the spawning prefab is me, so it's player Viking Hunter instead of Goblin Hunter. But you get the idea. And now I should be able to aggro all these guys and actually be able to lose the Lox and the 2-star Goblin by line of sighting them, right? So I can like run over here and just keep going. And then I can run behind this big thing over here and make sure I stay out of their line of sight. If I just stay here, aside from, you know, Desquito and other mobs that saw me, I should only get attacked now by the hunt mode goblin. There he is, the player Viking Hunter. Okay? So now you see we have implemented one of these behaviors. This is very simple because all we needed to do is change the name of the goblin. Okay, so instead of it saying goblin, it says player Viking Hunter. Okay, normally it'd say goblin Viking Hunter, but you get the idea, right? That's the basics of it. So then I'll just do that for all of these other systems here, right? All of these. Some of them are simple, like we just saw. Other ones will require me making a script, all right? So let's actually adjust that a little bit. Let's give you guys an example of what one of the behavior scripts would look like. We're going to make it so this goblin is a lot stronger, all right? So the goblin, every time the goblin attacks, it's going to make a new goblin, all right? That's pretty easy to set up and very easy to see visually. Obviously, in the real game, you would have to limit this, but we're going to take our goblin here. Goblin. When the goblin does basically anything, I might need action this, or I can just do this. I'm going to try just doing this. I don't remember which way I actually need to do, but I'm not too worried about it. Now all we need is a filter. Or actually, let's do the filter under the state. It's probably better. Filter. Okay. So now, when a goblin who is a Viking Hunter does anything like an attack, it will spawn another goblin who is a Viking Hunter. Okay? So let's see. We should be able to save that. And then now, when he attacks me, let's see what happens. He attacks. Oh, but nothing happened there. So probably what's going on is I need to do action. Boom. And now it should work. I just have some syntax wrong, most likely. Nope, still not happening. All right, let's see. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, yeah, this can't be used as a filter. Of course, of course. Okay, yeah, because of this part here, it won't work. Because when the goblin checks this data, it sees that it's a goblin, but it was spawned from a player. Make sense? So what I have to do, and this in general is a good practice, you should have your spawn data, that's all the data for the monster, and then you have your check. Okay, so this is Viking Hunter check. Okay, and this one is very simple. We need to change this. We need to add a custom data so that we can check against that custom data, because otherwise we're gonna check against hunt player, which will be all raid monsters and some other situations in Vanilla Valheim. We don't want to do that. We want to check against custom data. So we're going to make one called is Viking Hunter. Very simple, okay? And then now we have a check called ints is Viking Hunter, all right? We spawn this data, and then we check it with this data, yeah? So now let's go over here. We save this file, go back into our previous one, and we now need to adjust the filter so that it's the Viking Hunter check, not Viking Hunter data, which will always fail, right? And in this case, I think I can just do it this way. We'll see what happens. But I will need to spawn a new goblin, all right? So let's save this. Load the game back up. We need to kill this goblin. Sorry, buddy. And then we go here. Boom. Okay, now this hunt goblin, when he attacks, he should make a brand new goblin. I don't know why he's running all the way over there, but it's okay. I forgive you, little guy. There you go, look at that. Oh yeah, we suddenly have a big problem, don't we? You can see how quickly things get out of hand, right? And this would exponentiate and very quickly become a bad deal. Because you can imagine how every time every goblin attacks... Oh, and now they managed to aggro this guy. Alright, let's see how this goes. This is amusing. I have a feeling that Diverger is going to lose. Every time you hear the goblin go, oof, you know there's another goblin. Whoa, what's going on? Wait, is he still alive? This is insane. Oh my god, he is alive. Oh no, he's dead now. It triggered the overspawn alert. That's funny. Yeah, he died right here. Heyo! Oh, that's hilarious. Alright, so now that I showed you that, I'm amused. We can just let these guys like keep replicating here. I'm just gonna go into Ghost so they leave me alone. So now I can look at your comments, Power of Truth. Sorry about that. I saw you were saying something, but... Oh! Yeah, I guess this is another interesting thing. Let me show you this real quick. So, because these are hunt mode monsters, they know where I am, even though I'm in Ghost. But they can't actually attack me because I'm in Ghost. So, it creates this very amusing dynamic, doesn't it? But let me get into this comment thing here real quick. So if I go up here, all right, let's see. What did you say? No, I don't want to do that. Ah, okay. So Power of Truth says, can we throw a food item into the ocean when the alpha bone maw shows up? Ah, yeah. Having a counter to the bone maw probably might be good. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, because the bone will end up playing a really important fear-mongering role in Enigma, especially the flying bone wall. So, because I know that maybe you won't be amused by this, but the original reason for the bone wall was to stop players from sailing. Like that's literally why it exists. Because I realized I was like, if players can sail, they're gonna do these experiences where they go sail for like 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. So if I just make it so that there's this deadly monster that kills them, then their sailing experience turns into like a 10, 20-minute lesson, right? But I'm not sure what to do about the bone mold, to be honest. I need to have more personal experiences with them. It's always really hard to tell like when a monster is serving its role by being so unforgiving and terrifying, or when that monster is ruining the experience for the players, right? Because right now it's definitely like, let's say you want to build on the coast in the Mistlands, like you got to deal with the fact that there's like bone moor that can fly, that shoot explosive projectiles that explode like 5 or 6 times. Like it's super ridiculous, you know what I mean? But you get the gist. I'm not sure what I'll do about that. I like the idea of being able to like distract or satiate the bone moor. You know what I mean? That's kind of interesting. Or like maybe you could do something that makes it run away, you know? Probably what we'll do is make it so if you mount a bone moor trophy, then bone moor can't be near you. That way, you still have to deal with them out in the overworld, but then when you build a base, you can mount a trophy, and then like if a bone moor, attacks anything nearby, it just gets removed. But exactly as you said, Power of Truth, like the bone moor give you a reason to extend the bridges. Like that's what's so tricky about all of this is like anytime you create friction, on one hand, that's friction for the player. But on the other hand, you can now create a mechanic that relieves them of that friction, and the player will enjoy that mechanic because it has practical value. So a lot of game design is literally about making friction and then making a mechanic that gives relief from that artificial friction you created. Right? It's very trippy. So I'm not really sure what to do about the bone moor yet. I'm gonna leave that be for a while until I've had more experiences, because you're not even talking about the flying ones. You're talking about the alphas, which are like they're like a rare spawn in the, well, I don't know if they're actually that rare because there's a lot of fish in the ocean. So even a 0.3% chance, if you have 10,000 fish, you're gonna find a lot of them. So I don't really know what to do about that, but to go back to this, you can see the basics of what's gonna happen, right? There's the basics data. Some of these are really simple. Other ones are more complicated. We'll have to add a scripted behavior. Like, and you see in this case, these are called Viking hunters, but if this was just, duplicator monster, right? And every time it attacked you, it makes a duplicate of itself until there's like 4 of it around and then it stops. You know what I mean? So you kill them, it makes more. You kill them, it makes more. You kill them, it makes more. That could be valid. What you just saw with a whole army of goblin, that's not valid because that would fuck everything up. But toned down a lot, it's valid. It just needs to be limited properly and effectively. Makes sense? So what I'll go through next is I'll go through all of these things in this list and then make all the behavior types, make it so they work. And then I'll figure out, like, how do I then start applying those different behavior types to monsters. And because of some changes Yer made to how weights work, I think this will all be stackable and it won't even matter. Like, we won't need to do any extra scripting to make it so a monster can have multiple variants. Because what we'll do is every time... yeah, this is I hate this part. I know this probably doesn't make sense to you, but basically, this method works once. It works the first time you change a monster. But if I then apply this, it's going to then delete the current name and do this. So you basically have to have a system that notices, all right, this has a custom name. So the first time it's going to do this, but then the second time, instead of doing this, it's going to do something like here it would be string, humanoid, name, you know, whatever it is, humanoid M, name, like this. And then that would make it the current value. But then you have a problem, because if this gets applied to a normal monster, it's going to do this, and it's going to be like $enemy, goblin, Viking, hunter, and it's all a mess. I hate keeping track of the names. It's such a pain in the ass. I don't like that part. I don't like that part at all. So that's going to be what I struggle with, is figuring out like how to just make this work in a way where the names are just superficial, basically, but it notices, okay, this already has a variant, so I'm going to look at its current name and add to it instead of looking at the prefab. And I just have to think about that ahead of time. This is really heady. Don't worry too much about this kind of stuff, to be honest. It's just these are the nitty-gritty things that end up taking a bunch of time if you don't think about them beforehand. But this time, I'm being smart. I'm thinking about things beforehand, so it should be good. Should be better. Let's see. I think that's about it. So if there's any variants you all have in mind, then why don't you comment below? If you're watching this live stream later, comment on Discord or just comment on the YouTube video itself. But I actually have to end in like a couple minutes, so I'm going to end by reading all of these, and then I'll just end it, okay? So first we have the Sapper, which is a mob with 1 health that spawns far away from the monster, or far away from the player, and then has Hunt on, so it runs towards the player. The player has to shoot them with an arrow and they'll blow up. If the player doesn't do that, then the Sapper makes it to the player and then the Sapper blows up, which could be problematic. Then we have the Assassin mob. We mentioned this earlier. They're slower, and if they get within melee distance, they insta-kill you. Maybe they're not slower, because that doesn't really fit the vibe of Assassin. So maybe it'll be kind of like a Sapper. The Sapper is an assassin, but instead of insta-killing you, it explodes. Maybe the explosion doesn't kill you. Makes sense? Whereas the Assassin, it will kill you. It guarantee kills you if you let it get within melee range once. Even if you have a bubble, you die. That's how it works. You gotta pay attention to them. Then we have the Immortal, which is unkillable. You can't kill it. You have to survive around it for a minute, 2 minutes, however long, and then it vanishes. Vampire heals on every attack, so it's basically constantly healing itself when it's in combat, but when it's idle, it's not healing. Coward runs away when it takes damage. That one's easy. Lover targets other monsters of their same type and moves towards them when they're not in combat. So if you have a Lover Lox, it's going to target other Lox nearby and go towards them. That's actually, Lox is a bad example. Let's say if you have a Lover Troll, what it's going to do is target another troll nearby and set that troll as its spawn point. So it'll make it so that when players are in an area for an extended amount of time, they can have 2 of that monster. Then we have the Chaser, which is just faster and will chase you forever. Kind of like Hunt mode, except you can lose a Chaser by line of sighting them, whereas you can't lose a Hunt mode creature unless you go all the way away from it, all right? Then we have the Viking Hunter, the Leader. We talked about that earlier. Follower is just a subset of Leader. So when the Leader creates a 2-star mob, it's called a Follower. And then if the Leader dies, the Follower runs away. It becomes permanently feared or terrified. So that they'll just run away from the player as long as they can, okay? basically they go out of the loaded zone eventually. Then we have Betrayer, and this is a monster that flips its tamed and aggressive status. So like you're trying to fight it, and then it acts like it's friendly, and then as it's fighting for you, it suddenly betrays you. Make sense? So they're going to think it's a betrayer because it's friendly to them, but then it can betray them again after betraying its original, right? That's the idea. Then tank, too much health, fearful, runs away easily. This is very similar to coward, so probably can just get rid of that. Manipulator, this one basically is like a leader, except instead of like, basically this one makes all the mobs nearby faster, so they end up coming and dying to the player, whereas the manipulator is slower and is just speeding up all the monsters nearby to go and try and kill the player, but the manipulator doesn't actually get near the player and die. Makes sense? That's the idea. Then we have Scout, which is like saying, it's shouting, so they have to find it, right? Because it's alerting them. Haunted spawns another monster when it dies. Nurse heals. Broodmother spawns more. Screamer is like constantly alerting. Parasitic is like scurvy. It's already in the game, actually. And then all these other ones. There's a bunch of them, right? I've been working on this for a day or two. But I gotta go. So with that, without further ado, I will say bye-bye. I hope you all have a wonderful time. And thanks for checking out this development stream. I'm going to keep working on Enigma Mode. It's been a blast. And I think that this monster variety pack is going to be something relatively simple to implement that goes a long way into making combat and monster behavior and scouting more enjoyable. So have a great day, everybody. Check out my video tomorrow. I got a video all about feasts, so check that out. Like it if you can. Thanks. I really appreciate all of you.